Hey everybody, my name is Edgar, and I'd like to welcome all of you to another episode of Diffusing the WMSCOG. And today we're going to have a very strong episode. It's going to be a little chilling because we're going to talk about, among all things, David Koresh and the whole Waco controversy and the tragedy that happened in Waco, Texas, that a lot of people know about and hear about. But what would you think if I told you that in some way, what happened there is not too far off, theologically speaking, of what goes on in the World Mission Society. Obviously not, the physical part, not yet anyway, but a lot of the teachings that David Koresh was influenced by is actually very similar to what members are being taught in the World Mission Society Church of God. So if you're interested in hearing that, we're going to dive deep into that in this episode right now. So without further ado, let me share my screen. And I do want to say that I apologize for, this is a sensitive topic, but I think that it's something that needs to be covered. So this is David Koresh, okay, on Wikipedia. David Koresh, like I said, very famous, cult leader. He's known, for the Waco, Texas massacre and what took place there. But this is a good example of bad theology and what it can cause. And a lot of people think there's no way that can happen in the cult that I'm a part of. This cannot happen in this specific church, right? Because they'll never say I'm in a cult. This will never happen in my church. My church is the true church. But one thing you find in common with all these churches that claim to be the only, authority when it comes to the Bible and when they deep dive into Revelations is sometimes, all it takes is a charismatic leader. You know what I mean? And when things begin to get hard and when they start losing members or whatever happens because they themselves start losing their mind, things like these tend to happen. And right now, as we see a shift going on in the World Mission Society Church of God, specifically with the whole Daniel Park thing, you have a charismatic leader and what he's doing, but also you see it in general pastor, because again, I know that the current members that might be watching this are gonna be like, what are you talking about? General pastor is the leader of the original church. Well, that's already been proven that he's not. The World Mission Society is a branch of Ansan Hong's original church, not the original church itself. And so that being said, you know what I mean? These things tend to happen in places like this. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying it's important to look at the history because history tends to repeat itself. And there's already been a lot of things that have been said and they've been shared online where it's almost very creepy, things that WMSCOG leaders have been recorded saying, about, possibly harming family and friends and, like physically, you know what I mean? And, you know, implying things like that. And again, this is just my opinion on on these matters, but I think that it's important that we share. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about David Koresh. So here on Wikipedia, it says David Koresh, born Vernon Wayne Howe, August 17, 1959, was an American cult leader, a preacher who played a central role in the Waco siege of 1993 as the head of the branch Davidians. Remember that name, okay? This is what the church that he came from. As the head of the branch Davidians, a religious sect, Koresh claimed to be its final prophet. So he claimed to be the final prophet of a church that had already existed, the Davidian branch, right? The branch Davidians, who is a branch of the Seventh Day Adventist Church. And you're going to understand how all that correlates here in a second. But anyway, here it says his apocalyptic biblical teachings, just like World Mission Society, they focus so much on the apocalyptic things, and they also claim to have a final prophet, including interpretations of the book of Revelation and the seven seals, attracted various followers. Coming from a dysfunctional background, Koresh was a member and later a leader of the Branch Davidians, a movement led by Benjamin Roden. So remember, David Koresh is being influenced by this movement, the Branch Davidian, which is led by Benjamin Roden. So Benjamin Roden and the people around him, they in some way, shape, or form influenced David Koresh. This is the movement that David Koresh came from. So, based at the Mount Carmel Center outside of Waco, Texas, right? And you see it right here. This is the actual compound. There, Koresh competed for dominance with another leader, Benjamin Roden's son, George, until Koresh and his followers took over Mount Carmel in 1987. In the early 1990s, he became subject to allegations about polygamy and child sex abuse by former Branch Davidian associates. Further allegations related to the Branch Davidians' stockpiling of weapons led the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, and later the FBI to launch a raid, now known as the Waco Siege, on the group's Mount Carmel compound in February 1993. During the 51-day siege and violence that ensued, Koresh was wounded by ATF forces and later died of gunshot wound in unclear circumstances as the compound was destroyed in a fire. And so, like I said, this is a very famous tragedy that took place. There's so many documentaries and movies out there that you can literally watch on what happened in Waco, Texas. And this is a very well-known, fact, something that happened in history and is very sad, and unfortunately, again, this was done by a charismatic leader of a cult, okay? But I want you to remember those names, okay? I want you to remember these words. The first, the Branch Davidians, okay, the movement that he came out of, right, and that he became a leader of. And then also want you to remember Benjamin Roden, okay? Benjamin Roden, okay, who was the leader of this movement before Koresh. And so before we get into that, I want to explain for those who don't know, I want to show a little bit, share a little bit about what happened during the siege. Okay. So raid and siege by federal authorities. The Waco siege began on February 28th, 1993, when the ATF raided Mount Carmel Center. The ensuing gun battle resulted in the deaths of 4 ATF agents and 6 Branch Davidians. Shortly after the initial raid, the FBI hostage rescue team took command of the federal operation because the FBI has jurisdiction over incidents involving the deaths of federal agents. The negotiating team established contact with Koresh inside the compound. Communication over the next 51 days included telephone exchanges with various FBI negotiators. Koresh himself had been seriously injured by a gunshot as the standoff continued. He and his closest male associates negotiated delays so that he could write religious documents, which he said he needed to complete before his surrender. Koresh's conversations with the negotiators were dense, and they also included biblical imagery. The FBI negotiators treated the situation as a hostage crisis. The siege of the Mount Carmel Center ended on April 19, 1993, when U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno approved recommendations of FBI officials to proceed with the final advance in which the Branch Davidians would be removed from the Mount Carmel Center by force. In an attempt to flush Koresh out of the stronghold, the FBI resorted to pumping CS gas into the compound with the aid of an M728 combat engineer vehicle, which was equipped with a battering ram. In the course of the advance, the Mount Carmel Center caught fire. Barricaded inside the building, 79 Branch Davidians perished in the ensuing blaze. 21 of these victims were children under the age of 16. Coroner reports showed many Davidians died from single gunshot wounds to the head. Koresh, then 33, was one of them. A post-mortem on his badly burned remains could not determine whether he died by suicide or was killed. One FBI official speculated that Steve Schneider, Koresh's right-hand man, probably realized that he was dealing with a fraud and so shot and killed Koresh before turning the gun on himself. The medical examiner reported 20 people, including 5 children under the age of 14, had been shot, and 3-year-old had been stabbed in the chest. And so, again, I apologize because I know what we're reading is very strong. But again, it's very important to talk about these things because these are the things that, are they're worth mentioning because this happened in a cult. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that the people that were in part of this cult that were just loving to study the Bible and how deep everything got, and especially studying the book of Revelation and seeing this charismatic leader that would, love bomb them and make them feel at home and comfortable, do you ever think that they would somehow, it would ever even cross their mind that this would be the end result of it? No. But nevertheless, it happened, correct? And again, I want you guys to remember these things, okay? He came from the Branch Davidians, okay? He was under the tutelage of Benjamin Roden, okay? This is who was leading the movement at the time. And it's important to understand that. And it's also important to understand again that the Branch Davidian is a sect of the Seventh day Adventist Church. Okay. They deal with the book of Revelation, with the seven seals, and, they keep the Sabbath. They do all these things so similar, right? Okay. What is the point of me bringing this up? Remember the names: Benjamin Roden. Okay. Benjamin Roden, Branch Davidians. Okay. Now let's go into a little bit of information here on the Branch Davidians. So here, the Branch Davidians, or the General Association of Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, or the Branch Seventh-day Adventists, are a religious group founded in 1955 by Benjamin Roden. They regard themselves as a continuation of the General Association of Davidian Seventh-day Adventists established by Victor Hutoff in 1935. Let's read that again here. The Branch Davidians, or the General Association of Branch Davidian Seventh day Adventists, or the Branch Seventh day Adventists, are a religious group founded in 1955 by Benjamin Roden. They regard themselves as a continuation of the General Association of Davidian Seventh day Adventists, established by Victor Hutoff in 1935. Okay? Here. Now, you see, this is to explain that the Branch Davidians are part of Seventh day Adventists. Okay, this is where they came from. Much like World Mission Society came from, the Church of God Jesus Witnesses, or Witnesses of Ansan Witnesses of Jesus Church of God, established by Ansan. But where did Ansan himself come from? Seventh day Adventists, right? Same thing. Now, watch here. I want you to pay attention to this part. In 1957, Florence sold the Mount Carmel Center and purchased 941 acres near Elk, Texas, 13 miles northeast of Waco, naming it New Mount Carmel Center. After the failure of Florence's prophecy of apocalyptic events on or near April 22nd, 1959, she dissolved the Davidian Association in 1962 and sold all but 77.86 acres of the New Mount Carmel property. Benjamin Roden took possession of it in 1962 and began efforts to purchase the remaining 77.86 acres on February 27, 1973. New Mount Carmel was sold to Benjamin, his wife, Lois Roden, and their son, George Roden. Okay. From then on, the property was simply known as Mount Carmel. Upon the death of Benjamin Roden in 1978, Lois became the next Davidian prophet at the compound. So now we're seeing the guy who he was under, right? The same guy David Koresh was learning from, right? His wife, Lois Roden, was also a prophet of that movement. Okay. Why is that important? What does this have to do with anything, right? Okay, now let's go here. So now this is the official page of the Branch Davidian Seventh Day Adventist. Same movement. Okay. Now we're going to go under the author and writings, and we're going to go to Lois Roden. Okay. Now, why is this important? We're going to go to a book that has three volumes, and we're just going to skim through this first volume just because I want to show you guys how creepy this is. Okay. This book is called Behold Thy Mother. By his spirit, behold thy mother. And what's the verse that's quoted in the title? Galatians 4:26. It's crazy stuff, man. Crazy work. Okay. Now, I'm not telling you that everything in this book is word for word similar to World Mission Society, but what I am telling you is that it's very, very, it's eerily close and similar. And again, this is before World Mission Society started preaching about God the Mother. We know that did not happen until after Ansan Hong's death. Okay, so it's just to show you that these kind of heresies were already around, not only in Korea, but everywhere, right? And again, isn't it ironic that this kind of idea somehow, some way came out from a branch of the Seventh day Adventist Church, which makes you think, was this something that was mentioned in Seventh day theology, right? And so now let's see what she says. We're like I said, we're not going to read the whole book. We're just skimming through it, but I think it's important to, just at least read a little bit. Like, for instance, right off the back, Isaiah 66, verse 13, as one whom a mother comforteth, so I will comfort you, and ye shall be comforted in Jerusalem, the mother of us all. Galatians 4:26. Okay. And then here, the aim of this publication is to prove to the candid mind from scripture, history, and recent archaeological discovery that the Godhead, that the Godhead is represented as both masculine and feminine, according to the creation story of Genesis 1:26-27 and Romans 1:20. What is that talking about? Where have you heard that before? That's exactly coming from the sermon book, right? Jerusalem Mother. These verses are used. This is actually some of the main verses that are not just mentioned in the sermon book, but that are posted on, they're on their websites, on their cards, pamphlets, whatever. These are some of the verses that they run with all the time. And look who's using them before them, right? And again, this is the kind of stuff that influenced David Koresh of Waco. Okay. And so obviously you guys are familiar with Genesis 1:26-27, the two images, and Romans 1:20, everything is created and by God's will. And so what they use that verse to say, Revelations 4:11, Romans 1:20, that these things are clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that man will be without excuse, right? And so they apply that to Genesis 1:26, which is a whole nother video in itself. We've already debunked that has nothing to do with it. But nevertheless, my point is they're using that same terminology, right? And so you see here it says that two persons were created in the image of God, male and female, both invisible. Two people, Father Adam in the image of God, the Father, and God the Son, and Mother Eve in the image of God the Mother. The Holy Spirit, images of the persons and genders of the Godhead, that both were surrounded by a halo, the purest light before sin entered, even as God is encompassed in the light and glory of the throne. Yeah. And so we continue to go down. Here we go again. Galatians 4, verse 25. For this is Agar and Mount Sinai and in Arabia, an answer to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. Verse 26. But Jerusalem, the woman Sarah, which is above Mount Zion in heaven, is free, which is the mother of us all. Therefore, heavenly Jerusalem is our spiritual mother, symbolized by a real woman on earth with a proper name, Sarah. Crazy work, man. Crazy, crazy stuff. We see 144,000 right here. Again, Jerusalem, Revelations chapter 12, the woman carried away into the wilderness. Revelations chapter 21, verse 9. Come, come hither, I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife. verse 10, verse 11, verse 2 and 3. Crazy, man. Crazy. Galatians 4:26 again. The promise to Eve, right? The promise to Eve meaning life, right? Where are they getting this stuff from? It's so crazy. Earlier when I was reading it, it even talks, I think it even mentions about the new name. And it's important to understand. Look again, what is mentioned here? Ellen G. White General Conference Bulletin, right? All these things, stem from them. And something I want to show also, but I kind of skipped it when we went to the main homepage. But on the homepage of this website, one of the slides that they have is like it has Ellen G. White, and it says like God ordained, this, God works through women like this, or anoints women like this, and you can see that same like type of idea being passed down to World Mission Society, because again, a lot of this also has, and this is going to be another video that I'm going to make, but this is also connected to Suin. And so Suin, you have to remember, came out of the Seventh Day Adventist Church with Ansanhong, right? And as well as other members. So you have to wonder how much of these kind of things were they influenced by when they did what they did, right? Has verses here in Jeremiah. Here it is again, Genesis 3. It even mentions verses of the Passover, So I just encourage you guys to read this on your own time. I'm just gonna mention one more thing, and then we will call it good. Where is it at? So even here, Melchizedek, right? Same thing. Melchizedek. It even mentions Revelations 22:17. Uh, but let me see. Just looking for one more thing, because guess what is one of the things that's mentioned as well? Elohim is mentioned in here. That's what I'm trying to find. Okay, here we go. The Hebrew word used for God in the first creation story, furthermore, is Elohim. In the beginning, Elohim created. Elohim is also the most commonly used expression for the supreme reality, followed by Yahweh. Elohim is translated as God or the masculine singular, he, yet Elohim is made up of Elo, feminine singular, or for goddess, and the masculine plural ending M. The word could be translated either God or goddess. So notice again, right? Why does it mention things like this? It's the same. It sounds so similar that it's eerie. You know what I mean? And so I just encourage you guys to read this whole book. Honestly, I could read this whole thing, but I think it'd be better if you guys, and I'm gonna I'll post a link on there so you guys can read this book. But it's really crazy, and then I'll just end it with this right here, right? And so it says, the Lord shall comfort Zion. He will comfort all her waste places. He will make her wilderness like Eden and her desert like the garden of the Lord. As the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall God rejoice over thee. Revelation 22:16. I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify unto these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright morning star. And the Spirit and the bride say, come. And let him that heareth say, come, and let him that is athirst come, and whoever's will, let him take the water of life freely. Continue to behold thy mother, part two. So yeah, there's, like I said, there's a part two, and there's a part three to this book. So I definitely encourage you guys to check that out. I'm gonna try to scroll down here all the way to the top real quick so you guys can check out the cover one more time. And then I'm also gonna, I'm just gonna go to the homepage so you guys can check out what I was talking about. Here it is. God ordains women. And who does it got? Ellen G. White, right? And so I'm just saying, you can see from here that the idea is already there, right? The idea is already there. And when you start seeing, how all these things happen, how it's all connected, you just have to sit back and just process everything. And for the current members watching this, again, please do your research. Do your research. Because again, I'm not saying that this exact thing is gonna happen, but what I am saying is history tends to repeat itself. And we're seeing things, right? We're seeing pressure being applied to the World Mission Society right now. Like the church is splitting off, they're losing so many leaders. And I'm hearing, that the church is getting desperate. They're having, educations. They're doing so many things right now, that basically is damage control. And so again, it's just it's worth looking into. Really check it out because again, these people that were in this movement and this guy's movement, they had no idea what was about to happen. And so I want you guys to think about that. You know what I mean? All it takes is for them first they get rid of, the Bible being the authority. They claim to say that this church follows the Bible 100%, just like every cult does. But at a certain point, when they tell you, but our leader is actually over the Bible, even if they don't word it like that, but even if they say, I just follow mother, I just believe mother, right? Then what are they implying? That very thing. There's an audio recording of he says that, right? Where he says, I don't even basically don't even listen to the Bible, read Bible. I just follow mother, believe mother, right? And so with that being said, just imagine what kind of dangerous thoughts can happen after that because you're basically at the mercy of the person that's leading this movement, just like the people were at the mercy of David Koresh. So I hope you guys found this episode interesting. I'm definitely going to do another episode here soon covering some more things about Suin. I don't know which one I'm going to release first, but nonetheless, I hope that you guys enjoyed this content. If you found it useful, please comment, like, subscribe. My goal is to try to help as many people as I can before I go. So, you know what I mean? I'm not saying before I go. I'm definitely not talking about like An San Hong and the whole China ride, anything like that. But what I'm saying is, I don't plan on doing this forever. So while I'm here, you know what I mean? Let's try to get this content out to as many people as we can, so that we can help as many people as we can. Until next time, thanks for watching another episode of Diffusing the WMSCOG.